The job that I was assigned to do, processing film that can be used to detect how much radiation you might have received. So then we logged in Jones, May 1st, 1953, got so much Roentgens of radioactivity. If you got 3 or more Roentgens, you had to leave the flat. Sometimes people would come in and they had far more than that. The bomb is so hot, it basically melts the sand underneath it, like a glass type thing. And that whole area around it for like a half a mile would be very radioactive.
The guys that got hit with the radioactivity, incidentally, were the soldiers at Camp Desert Rock. They had those guys going over ground zero, and they got tons of radioactivity. Had bad reactions to it. It was pretty bad. They had birth defects and all this kind of stuff.
Our atomic vets had to fight long and hard to be barely recognized for their suffering and deaths as a result of exposure. Albert Schweitzer was considered in his time one of the world's most distinguished moral voices of the world. He called for the abandonment of both nuclear testing and the production of nuclear weapons. He took a stand that disarmament be under international control, and that the issue of verification should not be an excuse. He stated, "The new man suffers from a fatal flaw, because he has failed to rise to the vast reason required to accompany this vast power. The conquests of science and technology become a mortal danger to us, rather than a blessing."
Staffed by top scientists and medical men, these schools train selected students from all branches of the service for radiological safety missions with work in contaminated areas. The Radiological Records Unit will maintain complete exposure history on all personnel. It will prepare recommendations and make permanent records concerning all exposure and overexposure. The staff has established the maximum individual dosage of radiation at 1/10 Roentgen per day.
We are constantly being told about a permissible amount of radiation. Permissible? Who permitted it? Who has any right to permit it? This propaganda about safety will continue, but I believe the truth will reach and influence an ever-increasing section of public opinion. The awareness that we are all human beings together has become lost in nationalism, war, and through politics. In resigning ourselves to this fate without a struggle, we are guilty of inhumanity. This realization should shake us out of our lethargy. All that we have ever possessed of true civilization can be traced to the manifestation of a humanitarian spirit. Today, if we are to avoid our own downfall, we must once again commit ourselves to this spirit.
Weather conditions must be right for test purposes and air operations, and from the standpoint of safety, the priority watchword of the whole program. The huge fact which remains after every nuclear detonation, the towering, angry ghost of the fireball. Payoff is knowledge of wind speeds and wind directions. Advanced techniques make it possible to fly through the cloud without harm, even to stay inside of it for a while, if they observe the precautions taught by experience. Operating complex electronic recording devices of great importance, the men in the cloud tracking aircraft will follow the cloud hour after hour as it is carried cross-country by the wind, checking its spread, reporting every phase of its movements.
Meticulously mapping the daily movement of the contaminating nuclear cloud of just one nuclear test as it circles the globe with the currents of our atmosphere. Does any nation have any right to poison our Earth, our habitat? In 1954, the Japanese Council Against Atomic and Hydrogen Bombs collected 35 million signatures banning nuclear weapons and tests in the Pacific. Ignored. In secrecy, knowing its extreme toxicity, carefully measuring and recording each test's effects on animals, aquatic life, our environment, our soldiers, and the ability to destroy all structures, we went full speed ahead test after test, at times multiple tests in a day. A small taste of a couple sampled measurements of radioactivity.
A lot of that radioactive dust ended up going into small towns north of where we were, St. George, Utah being one. It has a very high rate of deaths by cancer in the ensuing years after that. And a number of movie actors, a great filming place for a lot of Hollywood movies, these westerns. And several died of cancer in the 10 years after that.
This 1951 pamphlet spread around Las Vegas and the state clearly displays the lies to us. The warning is about security restrictions to citizens, not hazards. It states, authorities have determined there is no danger expected from the ongoing testing, and safety will be maintained.
My unit posted these film badges all over Nevada and Utah, and then our guys would go around and collect them and develop them to find out how much radiation fell in those areas, and it was a lot. So that's sort of the dark side of some of this.
Thinking of test ban treaties as weakness and referring to those who questioned unrealistic and unpatriotic.
How many know 1,000 atom bombs and how much cancer was carried all around the planet?
One Röntgen causes the possibility of increased incidence of disease. There is no doubt that every bit of radiation, every added amount, is dangerous to the health, to the pool of human germplasm of the human race. Fallout radiation, strontium-90 and similar things, radioactivity that's being released, spread over the world, dropped down. Everybody in the world now has strontium-90 in his bones, radioactive material, and nobody had it 10 years ago. Strontium-90 did not exist. This is a new hazard to the human race, a new hazard to the health of people. And scientists need to talk about it.
He delivers to the UN over 11,000 respected scientists' signatures from around the world urging to stop all nuclear weapon testing. Obviously, statistics can be very tricky and there are many other variables like population growth. However, couldn't we be directing our money and scientific minds toward preventing cancers rather than processes we know cause cancer? While we deeply appreciate the research towards cures and treatment, cancer is often the result that has taken many of our loved ones' lives away. Could we ask all our foundations to stand up together to denounce these industries' deadly contamination, these known, well-researched causes of cancer?